that Ben Johnson had tested positive. So our next speaker, Moss Burmester, another person that probably needs no introduction. He's a two-time Olympian in swimming for New Zealand, but he's also represented us in surf lifesaving and underwater hockey. He placed 4th in the 200-meter butterfly in the Beijing Olympics in 2008. He was world champion at the 2008 World Short Course Championships and has represented us at 3 Commonwealth Games where he's won gold and bronze medals. Moss is a Massey graduate and now works with the Steele Institute of Performance as a performance specialist. Please welcome Moss to the stage.
I want to talk about through the eyes of an Olympic athlete and how we feel about it. At a high level in sport, and again, I'm looking at it from the high level, so it's really interesting to hear David's comments about how it's happening lower down. But do I believe it's corrupt, full of drug cheats, and basically sports are played in a way that's detrimental to an athlete's health? Yes, completely. Since I've finished my sporting career, I've become much more aware of the issues, and I've been pretty vocal about some of the doping issues, the Russian doping, but also at a local level, the national funding from the NSOs and high performance sport in New Zealand. Some of the, I'll just click through. Sorry, how do I get it to? So I'm just going to show a couple examples of how I've spoken out. And again, mainly through social media, which you would have seen at the Olympics. It was basically how the athletes were quite vocal about it. So now that I've grown up and sort of become slightly older and wiser and taken a step back from the sport, and I think someone said that we're experts in this area, and I think the better term really is that I've just been vocal enough to stick my neck out and talk about the sports, the actual issues that and the way athletes feel. And that's another tweet that I put out there. So I could have got myself in a bit of trouble, but I've basically had a guts for it, and I felt that it really needed to be talked about. And it's pretty encouraging, David, to hear your words saying that you believe New Zealand could lead that way. I found it really interesting that Trish sort of talked about and referred to the history of the ancient Greek and Roman arenas, and to be honest, I feel this is how it really is, and just in the modern age. And those in power basically are the ones that are the Roman emperors or sponsors, and they're the governing bodies, and they have little interest in the change and transparency of sport and the way it is now. These bodies have complete control, no matter their level, or failure or incompetency that they have, and they're just too big to fail or be replaced. And they're basically set up to withstand any dissent, insulating themselves from mismanagement or poor leadership. So if you have a look at the way that both FINA and also FIFA and FINA, so FINA is the governing body of all aquatic sports, and if you look at the way that, and by the way, on a side note, FINA, there was one piece that I read, an article that FINA, the governing body of the aquatic sports, was actually rated as being as corrupt, or not, if not more than FIFA. So that's saying something. So basically, every country is set up, gets a vote, an equal weighted vote, and in swimming, there's 206 countries. So therefore, you've got the big three, which is US, Australia, and Great Britain. And they have the exact same weighting as, say, Papua New Guinea, Samoa, or Equatorial Guinea, which was famous for Eric the Eel at the Sydney Olympics. For some of you may have seen him. So basically, the structure is so easily corruptible and basically impervious to change. I'll give you a few examples of what's happening, and obviously from the swimming world, because that's what I know, of the corruption, and again, just that they're not representing the athletes at all. In 2010, FINA sanctioned a 10K open water race. This was the final race in the series and was held in Abu Dhabi. The extremely high temperatures there of both air and water temperatures, and so the water was 30 plus degrees. And when you race in a swimming pool, it's regulated. This is by FINA again themselves, and it's regulated between 25 and 28 degrees. And normally it's around 26 and a half. And so you can, it is, most people consider that being quite cold. So one of the leading American swimmers who was hoping to go into the London Olympics, Fran Crippen, he died of heat exhaustion in that race. And 2 years following that race, the head of the organising committee there was voted onto the FINA board. So he was basically responsible for the death, and then 3 years after that, FINA decided to award another official leg of the open water series back to the same area. So obviously the swimming community was didn't agree with us at all, and also when FINA found out that there was a Fran Crippen Memorial, which was going to be on at the same time, FINA decided to triple the prize money for that leg. Another example is that during the broadcasting of the Olympics at Beijing, in the Beijing where I raced, they decided to reverse the heats and the finals. So finals were raced in the morning, heats were done at night time. Again, complete disregard to what any of the athletes or coaches wanted. And the same again actually in Rio, the same thing happened there. So heats and finals were shifted 2 hours later, and this was to accommodate for NBC because they had the broadcasting rights and they wanted to broadcast at the best time for the American audience. So again, it's just like, what is the most important here, the athletes' performances or the money that's coming in? So back to my comparison of the Romans and the governing bodies. Athletes I see now are basically the gladiators in the competing, but on a global stage it's televised to billions and for multi-billions of dollars around the world. One of my tweets that I put out following what I call the pathetic cop-out of the IOC, not having blanket banned Russia, was Pierre Coubertin will be turning in his grave. And I truly believe this. I was lucky enough to spend 2 weeks in ancient Olympia at the IOA, which is the International Olympic Academy, and there we were supposed to learn all about the Olympics and the Olympic Charter. The Olympic Charter, basically, if you want to know what it stands for, it basically says the Charter calls for the IOC to oppose any political or commercial abuse of sport and athletes. This is clearly being failed big time. What I found really interesting was, though, it was due to the IOC's lack of leadership in Rio and the whole doping debacle there. It basically gave the athletes a right to speak out, and you would have seen this with the likes of Matt Horton, the Australian swimmer, and Lily King, again, accusing the doping cheats of San from China and Efimova from Russia, and they were pretty vocal about it. And the crowd got in behind some of that too, which is quite nice to see, and booed some of those athletes. And I believe this is really the only way that you're going to see change come around, is if it's athlete-focused and athlete-led. If you're wondering again, though, why athletes haven't spoken out about it, as I have, and we're worried about sticking our necks out, it's because we're basically shackled legally and fearfully to the contracts that we're forced into signing. I've stuck my neck out now, but I knew a lot of this was happening when I swam, and I wasn't prepared to do it then. And so it's really only afterwards that I've stepped away from the sport that I feel like I can do this and not get in trouble. But this is also the case at the local level too. So within New Zealand, I don't know if they'll be too happy for me saying this, but the 4 rowers who missed out because of the Russian debacle, I spoke to them personally, and they said they were too worried to speak out about. They were obviously really disappointed that they couldn't get to go and felt really strongly about it, but they were too worried to speak out about it. And it's basically biting the hand that feeds you. And so we really are shackled as athletes. You can't really say or do anything. And that's what's really disappointing. I see that if the governing bodies in New Zealand, or the governing bodies in general, are supposed to be representing the athletes and what's best for them, then why aren't, especially in New Zealand, why aren't they speaking out about it? Why aren't they leading it? And to me, it's a pretty easy way to get it, is just to ask the athletes some pretty simple questions, get the mandate from them by finding out what they truly want. And then when you've got that mandate, you can speak out about it, and you can basically start to try to bring about those changes. Trish is signaling for me to wrap up. So obviously, it's pretty disheartening as a kid. You dream of going to the Olympics, and you put absolutely everything into it. It isn't just you turn up and train. Your whole entire lifestyle goes towards training and trying to make that dream. And it's amazing, though. It's extremely hard to explain what the Olympics are like. If you haven't been, you can't really explain it to people. But I still believe it's totally worth going after. I mean, if you look at the benefits it does socially for New Zealand on a wider level, it's still worth pursuing. But it clearly needs to be cleaned up. So, thank you.
Thank you, Moss.